Before we actually look at the items list, let me show you where you would use the items. If you go to create invoices as an example, you'll have to choose different items from the item list here to invoice your customer. Another example is if you are purchasing items, maybe you're on the enter bills option. You'll see there's an items tab and an expenses tab. The expenses tab will have your chart of accounts, but the items tab will actually have that same item list right here because sometimes you're buying items. You're going to see these two tabs, expenses and items, on each of the forms that you work with in QuickBooks. To access the items list, you will need to go through the menu, click on list, and the second option down says item list. This is a list of all the items that you buy or sell in your business. This item list can have 100 items in it, or if you only have 6 or 7 things you do, you might only have a very short list. You'll notice that each of these items is set up as a certain type. You'll notice here you have what we call service items. Those are services you perform for your customers or you purchase them. You've got framing, installation, here's repairs. When you're looking at the different types, you'll notice that all of the service items, if you come over to the column that says name, they're in alphabetical order. The same would be true for inventory parts. When you're looking at your list of inventory parts, those are in alphabetical order. An inventory part means that you want a physical count of how many of an item you currently have, and you want QuickBooks to let you know when you're needing to order some more. When you're looking here at this list, you'll notice it tells you over in this column how many you currently have of each of these items. If you have any on a sales order, you'll see them here. And then this last column that says price is the price you charge for one of these. There's also an attachment column. If you have something you need to attach there, you can just double click next to that line item. The next one are your non-inventory parts. These are physical items that you purchase or you sell, but you don't care to track how many you have. Maybe you just order one as you need it. Those are what we call non-inventory items. You can still run reports to see how many you bought or sold. You're just not going to have anything in that total quantity column. Another type is the other charge. You'll notice these are miscellaneous things like bad debt, delivery charges. When you go down the list, the next one I want to point out is the one that says subtotal. This is a great one to use because what this allows you to do is you can enter 8 or 10 items, and then if you want to subtotal those, you can do that by adding a line called a subtotal. And as long as you set it up and the type is called subtotal, it will add anything above it. Below that, you have some groups. A good example of a group is if you build houses as an example, and every single time someone wants an estimate, then you have to pull in 300 or 400 different items. If you have a group already set up, then you can tell QuickBooks ahead of time which items go in that group, and that way when you're on an estimate or an invoice, you can actually put in the group name and it will pre-populate all of the items that go in that group. That's a really nice one to have if you have a lot of items that go in a particular product or service that you make to sell. The next thing is you have discounts and payments that you can actually add to your invoices. Below that, you have sales tax items, and then you have sales tax groups. And when we start talking about sales tax in a later section, we'll be looking at these again. My point with this is I just want you to be familiar with the different types that are available. You want to make sure when you're setting up your item, you choose the correct type. Let's go ahead and add a new item. We're going to add a glass door. All you have to do is right-click anywhere in this list, and you're going to see your options. Here's your new. You can edit one that's already here. You can duplicate an item if there's another one you need to create that's similar. Duplicate it and make the few changes you need. You can also delete an item. If you've ever used an item even one time, you're not going to be able to delete it because it's used actually in your reports. What you would have to do is go ahead and make it inactive. You can also add multiple items at the same type if you wanted to do that here. And here's your make item inactive option. Right now we're going to say new. And I want to add an inventory part to show you how this works. Here's where it asks you which type is it that you're trying to create. I'm going to say inventory part. And by the way, if you don't have inventory part on this list, it's because when you set up the company file, you told it you do not track inventory. You'd need to go back through the preferences under edit and go ahead and turn those options on. But this is an inventory part, and we're going to give our part a name. We're going to say this is a glass door. This is not a sub-item of another, but as an example, if you remember when we looked at the items list, we had subs. That would be a main item, and these are subs of this one called subs. It's a coincidence they have the same name there. I'll go back to new item over here on the left. If you buy this on a regular basis, especially from a particular vendor, you might have a manufacturer's part number that you want to track. You can type that here. You also can set up different categories if you want for your items. You would actually click on Add New and decide what type of category you want this to be. Maybe you have a category called Doors, and all the doors go underneath that category. Also, this unit of measurement, this would be used if you sell an item by the foot, by the case, by the yard. You could set up this unit of measurement, and that way when you're on an invoice, as an example, instead of saying one of these, you can choose how many under the unit of measurement column. When you have a physical item that's inventory, you're going to notice that you have a side on the left that says purchase information and a side on the right that says sales information. And here you'll want to put in the description for both. I'm just going to put in glass door. We're going to put in glass door for each one of these. This is when you buy it. This is when you sell it. So that means this will pull onto an invoice. Over on the left, how much do you pay for this on average? Let's say that usually we pay about $500 for it, and we like to sell it for $7.99. Don't change this cost of goods account because this is the correct account. When you buy something that you intend to sell, it is a cost of goods sold. Underneath that, you also have the ability to put in a preferred vendor if you happen to have one. You also have this option for an alternate vendor. If you have a second vendor that you like to use, once you've actually saved this one, you can come back in and choose your alternate vendor. Back over on this side, the next thing you see is tax code. If you charge sales tax to your customers, then you want to make sure this says taxable sales. If you don't, then you can say non-taxable sales. Usually a physical item is taxable. If you happen to be in the construction field, those taxes are usually built into the actual estimate, so you'd probably choose non-taxable. But if you're not in a construction company and you do sell physical products that you consider inventory, you'll want to make sure this says tax. Now here's probably the most important thing on this whole screen. It says income account. And what this means is when I put Glassdoor on an invoice to sell my customer, which income account would I like this to show up on when I run my profit and loss? I'm going to put materials income. Because this is inventory, you also have these fields at the bottom. You don't want to change the asset account. That's inventory asset. That means your business is worth more because you have physical items in inventory. But you can set a reorder and a maximum reorder point. That means when I get down to 2, you want QuickBooks to pop up and tell you to order some more. Or you might not want to have more than 5, and you can have QuickBooks let you know that you're ordering too many. If you have any on hand, you can go ahead and put that number in here. I'll say we have 1, and you can see it calculated the value based on the cost right over here. That's all you have to set up when you're setting up an inventory part. I'm going to click OK, and we're going to look in our items list and see if we see our glass doors, and we do right there. And you can see we told QuickBooks we have 1 and that we charge $799 for that glass door. And that's how you're going to start putting items into inventory. At this point, if you buy more glass doors, and it doesn't matter how you purchase it, it could be you have a bill for it, it could be used your debit card and bought a few more. However you purchase it, If you use that items tab we talked about earlier, then it will add to this total quantity. If you put this item on an invoice and you sell it, this quantity will decrease, and that's how the numbers go up and down here. Let's go ahead and stop the video right here. I want you to move over to part 2, and we're going to continue talking about how to work with items and inventory.